On Thanksgiving night, the dining room of a quiet suburban home in Michigan became so silent that even the ticking clock in the hallway seemed too loud. 20 relatives sat around a long table covered with roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, pumpkin pie, candles, and autumn decorations. At the head of the room, the younger daughter stood with a laptop in her hands, expecting to embarrass her older sister in front of everyone. She had gone into the old bedroom without permission, opened private work files, and carried the laptop back like she had discovered something shameful. But the screen did not reveal failure. It revealed a secret. There were business accounts, active contracts, private client records, and financial numbers large enough to make every face at the table change. The older daughter, a 38-year-old American woman from Grand Rapids, Michigan, had built a multi-million-dollar jewelry authentication company. She was worth more than $12 million. For the first time in her life, her family looked at her as if she mattered. But there was no pride in their eyes. Only shock, confusion, and greed. Her name was Claire Whitman, though most of her family had never truly seen her. From the outside, the Whitman family looked perfectly ordinary. They lived in a neat Michigan suburb with an American flag on the porch, pumpkins by the steps in October, and Christmas lights that went up every year after Thanksgiving. They attended church on Sundays, watched football during the season, and hosted family dinners like any other Midwestern household. To neighbors, they seemed warm, traditional, and close. But inside that house, love was never equal. Love had a favorite. For the first 8 years of Claire's life, she was an only child. Her parents were not overly affectionate, but they were present. Her mother helped her with spelling homework at the kitchen table. Her father sometimes took her fishing on Saturday mornings. They ordered pizza, watched movies, and lived a quiet, simple life. To a child that felt safe enough. Then her younger sister was born 2 months early, and everything changed almost overnight. The baby came home fragile, tiny, and surrounded by fear. Her mother became obsessed with keeping the house clean. Doorknobs were wiped again and again. Counters smelled of disinfectant. Hand sanitizer appeared in every room. Visitors were watched carefully. Every cough, every sneeze, every outside germ became a possible danger. The younger child was treated like something precious that had to be protected at all costs. And Claire became the risk. If she coughed once, she was sent to her grandmother's house. If a classmate had the flu, she was told not to come home right away. If she sneezed near the baby, her mother looked at her with panic as if she had done something wrong. Adults called it caution. They told her she needed to understand. They said her sister was delicate and needed extra care. But Claire was only a little girl. All she understood was that her own home no longer felt like a place where she fully belonged. At first, staying with her grandmother felt like an adventure. Her grandmother baked oatmeal cookies, played old movies, and kept a jewelry box full of vintage brooches, pearl necklaces, rhinestone pins, and little treasures from church sales. She let Claire sort them by color, shape, age, and style. She told her every old thing had a story if someone cared enough to look closely. Those quiet evenings at the kitchen table became Claire's first real comfort. She did not know it then. But those small pieces of jewelry would one day lead her toward the life her family never believed she could build. Back at home, the younger sister slowly became the center of everything. If Claire brought home straight A's, her mother barely looked at the report card. If Claire won the school science fair, her father praised her for a few seconds before asking her to move the display board into the garage because the glue smell might bother her sister. But when the younger sister earned an average grade on a spelling quiz, it was placed proudly on the refrigerator under a cheerful magnet. The moment Claire truly understood her place came when she was 12. She had spent months practicing a piano piece for the school talent show. She imagined her parents sitting in the audience, smiling at her, maybe even recording the performance. But on the night of the show, her younger sister complained of a stomachache. There was no emergency, no serious illness, only discomfort. Still, both parents stayed home. Claire played under the stage lights in front of strangers, looking at the empty row where her family should have been. 2 weeks later, her younger sister played a simple beginner flute piece at school. The entire family came. Parents, grandparents, aunts, and relatives all clapped as if they had witnessed something extraordinary. Claire sat in the back and smiled because that was what she had learned to do. By middle school, the younger sister understood how the family worked. Tears brought attention. A headache canceled chores. A bad grade became the teacher's fault. If Claire complained, she was called jealous. If she stayed quiet, she was praised for being mature. That word followed her everywhere. Mature, independent, understanding. Adults said it like a compliment, but it became an excuse to overlook her, so Claire stopped asking to be noticed. She spent more time in her room reading books about art history, antiques, and jewelry. She learned the difference between Art Deco and Art Nouveau before she ever cared about school dances. She learned how to recognize old clasps, fake pearls, and maker's marks. While her sister collected attention, Claire collected knowledge. By the time she reached high school, she no longer waited for her family to clap. She began planning her way out. The forgotten daughter had learned something powerful. When no one is watching, no one sees what is being built in silence. No one noticed the scholarship forms. No one asked about the late nights at the library. No one saw the perfect test scores hidden away in her room. Years later, when her sister exposed that laptop during Thanksgiving dinner, the family finally saw Claire clearly. Not as the quiet daughter, not as the disappointing sister, not as the woman with a strange little antique job. They saw money. And that was when Claire realized the painful truth. They had never wanted to know who she was. They only cared about what they could take from her. High school did not feel like a normal chapter of Claire's life. To her, it felt like an exit sign. While her younger sister continued to become the center of every room, Claire quietly began building a way out. There was no dramatic escape, no suitcase packed in the middle of the night, no angry speech at the front door. Her escape was made of smaller things: late nights at the library, scholarship forms hidden under old sweaters, extra shifts at a diner, and a determination that grew stronger every time her family looked past her. By freshman year, Claire understood the rules inside the Whitman house. Her younger sister needed help. Her younger sister needed patience. Her younger sister needed money. Claire needed to be easy. If she asked for new shoes, her mother reminded her that there were medical bills and school costs to think about. If she needed a ride to school early for debate club, her father said her sister was having a hard morning and Claire should figure something out. So she did. She learned bus schedules. She learned how to walk through Michigan snow with wet socks and still sit through first period as if nothing was wrong. She learned that complaining only made adults call her selfish. The one advantage of being ignored was freedom. Nobody watched closely enough to stop her. Claire joined the debate team, the student newspaper, the National Honor Society, and a volunteer group at the local community center. She took every advanced class her school offered. On weekends, she worked part-time at a small family diner, serving coffee, wiping tables, and carrying plates of pie to customers who often treated her with more kindness than her own relatives did. The diner owner, a warm, middle-aged American woman with tired eyes and a generous heart, noticed Claire quickly. She saw how the girl worked without complaint, how she studied during breaks, how she never wasted a single dollar. On Claire's birthday, when her own family forgot, the diner owner placed a slice of pie in a takeout box and told her that smart girls needed fuel. Claire smiled all the way home, even though she ate the pie alone in her bedroom. Debate became the first place where Claire discovered that her voice could matter. At home, speaking up made her difficult. In a tournament room, speaking clearly made people listen. She learned how to build an argument, how to stay calm when challenged, and how to make her point without raising her voice. By junior year, she had won 2 state-level competitions. Her parents missed both. The first time, her sister had a cheerleading event. The second time, her sister felt emotionally overwhelmed and needed the family's support. After that, Claire stopped announcing important things at home. When her article won a regional student journalism award, she folded the certificate and placed it in a shoebox. When she became editor of the school paper, she celebrated by buying herself a cheap gas station coffee before class. When she received a perfect score on the SAT, she sat in the guidance counselor's office staring at the results until the numbers blurred in front of her eyes. Her guidance counselor, a kind man who had watched her push herself for years, understood what that score meant. He printed the results and told her it could change her life. Claire carried the paper home like it was something fragile and precious. In the kitchen, her mother was helping the younger sister rewrite an English essay that had been left until the last minute. Claire stood by the table and said she had received her SAT score. Her mother barely looked up. She told Claire that was nice, then asked her to keep her voice down because her sister was stressed. The younger sister glanced at the paper and rolled her eyes, calling Claire perfect in a tone that made success sound like an insult. Their mother immediately comforted the younger girl, reminding her that everyone learned differently. Claire went upstairs, closed her bedroom door, and laughed quietly because crying felt too exhausting. The perfect score never went on the refrigerator. A week later, her sister's average essay grade did. College applications became Claire's secret project. She applied to 15 schools without telling her family. She wrote every essay herself. She requested recommendation letters, filled out financial aid forms, and stayed late in the computer lab after school. Her guidance counselor helped her search for scholarships and fee waivers, never directly saying that she was doing this alone, but understanding it completely. In March, acceptance letters began to arrive. One from a strong state university, then one from a prestigious school in Chicago, then others from colleges her parents had only heard mentioned in movies or news stories. Some offered generous aid. A few offered nearly everything. Claire kept each letter hidden in the same shoebox as her certificates, tucked beneath sweaters in her closet. She knew if her sister found them, the story would somehow become about abandonment, jealousy, or unfairness. The letter that changed everything came from a prestigious university in Connecticut. It offered a full scholarship covering tuition, housing, meals, books, and travel support. Claire read it in the school library beside a window while snow melted into gray slush outside. For several minutes she could not move. Then she cried quietly in the restroom until her face looked normal again. They were not tears of sadness. They were tears of release. When Claire finally told her parents, their reaction was exactly what she feared. Her mother said Connecticut was far away. Her father asked if she expected them to pay for flights. Her younger sister burst into tears and asked if Claire was really going to leave her behind. Nobody said congratulations until Claire's grandmother called that night. Her grandmother's voice trembled with pride as she told Claire to go build a life no one else could take credit for. That summer, Claire worked double shifts at the diner and saved every dollar she could. On move-in day, her parents did not drive her because her sister had a cheer showcase. Her aunt took her instead. Before Claire left, her grandmother pressed an envelope into her hand. Inside was $500 saved little by little from Social Security checks. Claire tried to refuse it, but her grandmother would not let her. That first night in her dorm room, Claire sat on a narrow bed in a building full of strangers and felt safer than she had ever felt at home. No one expected her to shrink. No one asked her to be quiet. No one treated her future like an inconvenience. She placed her grandmother's old rhinestone brooch on the desk beside her books and made a promise to herself. One day she would build a life so strong that being overlooked would no longer be possible. College changed Claire, but not in the bright, effortless way people often imagine. She did not suddenly become fearless. She still checked prices before buying coffee. She still felt guilty when she bought a winter coat, even though the cold Connecticut wind cut through her old one. But for the first time in her life, she lived in a place where people expected her to speak. Professors asked for her opinion. Classmates listened when she answered. Nobody knew her younger sister. Nobody called her mature as an excuse to ignore her. Nobody expected her to become smaller, so someone else could feel important. Claire studied art history and business, a combination her father later dismissed as impractical, even though her scholarship covered everything. During school breaks, she worked wherever she could. She spent hours in the campus library, helped at a museum gift shop, and eventually earned a summer internship at a small auction house in New Haven. That internship became the first place where all the quiet knowledge from her childhood finally had a purpose. Most interns disliked estate inventory work. It meant sorting through objects left behind by wealthy families, silver tea sets, old paintings, dusty boxes of letters, and tangled jewelry stored in velvet bags. To Claire, it felt like solving puzzles. A clasp could reveal a decade. A maker's mark could change the value of a piece. A stone that looked dull under bad light could become extraordinary when examined properly. Every object had a hidden history, and Claire had spent years learning how to look closely. After graduation, she accepted an entry-level job at a respected auction house in Chicago. The salary was modest, and her apartment was so small that she could reach the stove from her bed, but it was hers. She paid her own bills, walked to work through the city wind, and built a life piece by piece. Her family barely reacted. Her mother asked if she was still working with old jewelry. Her father suggested that maybe one day she could find a practical office job. Her younger sister laughed and said it sounded like working in a fancy thrift store. Claire did not correct them. She had learned that explaining herself to people determined to misunderstand her was exhausting. Her first major discovery happened 6 months into the job. The auction house was handling the estate of an elderly widow from Lake Forest. Most of the jewelry had already been labeled as costume pieces. Claire was checking a tray of brooches when one small Art Deco piece caught her attention. It was not dramatic. It did not glitter loudly. But the weight was right. The hinge was too refined for a cheap copy, and a tiny mark on the back looked familiar beneath the dust. She spent her lunch break researching it. Then she stayed late after work. Then she spent 2 more nights comparing old catalog images, maker's marks, and auction records. When she finally brought her findings to her supervisor, he looked doubtful. Claire was young, quiet, and still considered one of the newest employees. But she came prepared with photographs, notes, historical references, and similar sales. The brooch sold for $49,000. After that, her supervisor stopped treating her like background noise. He began handing her more pieces to examine. Claire found a mislabeled Victorian mourning ring, then a rare Tiffany bracelet, then a necklace that had been sitting in a family safe for decades because everyone assumed it was fake. Her reputation grew slowly at first, then faster than anyone expected. Dealers asked for her by name. Estate attorneys requested her opinion. Collectors trusted her because she was careful, discreet, and never tried to make herself more important than the object in front of her. For the first time, Claire was not simply surviving. She was becoming valuable. But at family dinners back in Michigan, nothing changed. Her mother still introduced her as the daughter who worked with antiques. Her father still asked whether she had thought about finding a real job. Her younger sister still talked over her, usually about a marketing internship, a new handbag, or some small inconvenience that had become a major family event. Once Claire had authenticated a piece that sold for more than $200,000 that morning. That evening, her sister spent 20 minutes showing everyone a bracelet from the mall. The real turning point came 3 years into Claire's job. A private collection arrived from an old Chicago family, and inside it was an antique necklace that everyone believed to be a later reproduction. Claire knew almost immediately that something was different. The craftsmanship was too specific. The stones were matched with too much care. The setting had the quiet confidence of something original. She worked on it for days, barely sleeping. When the confirmation came back, even her supervisor looked stunned. It was a lost piece from a famous European designer one collectors had discussed for years but believed had disappeared. The sale made national industry news, and Claire's commission was larger than her yearly salary. A week later, her supervisor called her into his office and told her the truth. She was making other people rich. It was time for her to build something of her own. The idea terrified her. Starting a business sounded like something people with safety nets did. People with family money. People with parents who believed in them. Claire had none of that. But she had skill. She had contacts. She had clients who trusted her eye. So she took the risk. She rented a tiny office above a bakery on the north side of Chicago. The walls were thin, the radiator hissed all winter, and the whole place smelled like sugar and coffee by noon. She bought second-hand furniture, used her savings, took out a business loan, and opened her own fine jewelry authentication company. The first year was brutal. Claire woke up before dawn, afraid she had ruined her life. Some months she paid herself almost nothing. She worked with local antique dealers, estate lawyers, private collectors, and families who needed quiet answers before dividing inherited jewelry. She was not the cheapest option, but she was thorough. That became her reputation. By the 3rd year, she had employees. By the 5th year, she had offices in Chicago, New York, and Palm Beach. By the 7th year, her company was handling private collections worth more than her parents' entire neighborhood. And her family still believed she worked in a little antique shop. Claire did not correct them. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was protection. Maybe she simply wanted one part of her life they could not touch. She bought a beautiful but understated home, drove a luxury car that looked ordinary unless someone knew cars, and wore vintage pieces worth more than her sister's student loans to family dinners without anyone noticing. Then her mother called, crying about money. There were school loans, medical bills, house payments, and more. Family expenses piling up. Against her better judgment, Claire began sending $7,000 a month anonymously through a family account. Her parents assumed some relative was helping. Her younger sister claimed her positive energy had brought blessings to the family. Claire let her believe it. At the time, she still thought helping from a distance meant she could love her family safely. She did not yet understand that some people do not receive kindness as a gift. They treat it as permission to ask for more. Thanksgiving had always been the most important holiday in the Whitman house. Claire's mother treated it like a yearly performance. The good china came out of the cabinet. The dining room curtains were steamed. Pumpkin candles were placed on the sideboard. A wreath hung on the front door, and the house smelled of cinnamon roasted turkey and warm bread. Every year, relatives gathered around the long table and listened to a mother give a small speech about gratitude, family, and tradition. For Claire, Thanksgiving had always felt more complicated. It was the holiday where everyone sat close enough to pretend they were a loving family, but far enough apart emotionally to make the truth obvious. Her younger sister was praised for every small update. Her parents smiled at relatives while quietly dismissing Claire's achievements. The older daughter had learned to sit politely, eat slowly, and say as little as possible. That year, however, her mother had injured her back 2 weeks before the holiday. She called Claire, sounding overwhelmed, saying she could not stand in the kitchen all day cooking for 20 people. Claire's younger sister was too busy with school stress and her own needs to help. Her father had no idea how to manage a holiday meal beyond carving the turkey and asking where the serving spoons were. So Claire offered to handle the food. Her mother immediately became nervous. Catering was expensive, she said. Claire told her not to worry about the cost. Her mother asked if she was taking out a loan. Claire nearly laughed, but she only said that everything was under control. She hired a private catering company she often used for client dinners. They specialized in elegant American holiday meals: herb-roasted turkey, maple-glazed Brussels sprouts, bourbon sweet potatoes, handmade rolls, cranberry sauce, gravy, and pies beautiful enough to belong in a magazine. The meal cost more than her parents believed she earned in months. But to them, Claire was still the daughter with the strange little antique job. The daughter who probably clipped coupons and lived modestly because she had no other choice. On Thanksgiving morning, Claire arrived early wearing a simple cream sweater, dark jeans, and boots. The sweater was cashmere. The boots were Italian leather. No one noticed. Her younger sister only noticed that Claire had not brought homemade food. She made a sharp comment about store-bought Thanksgiving and how real families cook together. Claire smiled politely and said nothing. It was easier than reminding her that the younger sister had never cooked a holiday meal in her life. The caterers arrived on time and moved through the kitchen with quiet professionalism. Claire's mother pretended to be embarrassed in front of relatives, but once she tasted the gravy, her expression changed. The guests praised the food again and again. Claire's aunt whispered that it was the best Thanksgiving meal the family had ever served. Even the younger sister grew quiet after tasting the sweet potatoes, though she would never admit she liked them. Claire had brought her laptop because she was monitoring a major international auction. A private client was bidding on a rare Art Nouveau necklace, and if the client won, Claire's team needed to verify several documents immediately. She hated mixing work with family, but the luxury auction world did not pause for American holidays. After dinner, while relatives moved toward dessert and coffee, Claire slipped into her old bedroom to check the auction status. The room looked almost exactly as it had when she left for college. Pale blue walls, an old bookshelf, a faded comforter, the same closet door with a small dent from a suitcase she dropped as a teenager. Her younger sister's old room had been renovated several times. Claire's room had simply been left behind. She opened her laptop and reviewed the auction dashboard, client files, contract updates, and messages from her New York office. Several windows were open at once, including one private financial summary she forgot to close. Then her phone rang. It was her head appraiser calling about the auction documents. Claire stepped into the hallway for less than 2 minutes. That was all her younger sister needed. When Claire returned, the laptop was gone. A cold feeling moved through her before she even reached the dining room. Then she heard her sister's voice, bright and cruel, cutting through the family chatter. She was telling everyone that they should see what kind of important antique emergency Claire had on Thanksgiving. Claire entered the room just as her younger sister turned the laptop toward the table. The younger woman clearly expected laughter. She expected to expose something small, dull, or embarrassing. Maybe she hoped the family would finally see Claire the way she had always described her, unimpressive, strange, and secretly failing. Instead, the room fell silent. The screen showed Claire's company dashboard, business accounts, private contracts, recent commission records, quarterly revenue. Numbers large enough to make every person at the table stop moving. The younger sister's smile vanished. Her eyes moved across the screen again and again, as if the information might change if she stared long enough. She whispered that it could not be real. Claire's mother gave a nervous laugh. She said there must be some mistake. Claire worked with antiques after all. For a moment, Claire stood completely still. The secret she had protected for years had been dragged into the open without her permission. Yet instead of panic, she felt a strange calm. Maybe because the lie was finally over. Maybe because some part of her had always known it would end this way. She told them the truth. She owned one of the most respected fine jewelry authentication companies in the country. She had offices in Chicago, New York, and Palm Beach. She authenticated private collections, estate jewelry, and luxury historical pieces worth millions. The little antique job they had mocked for years was not a hobby. It was her empire. Her father's fork slipped from his hand. Her aunt covered her mouth. Several relatives stared at Claire as if seeing a stranger. The younger sister looked stunned, almost sick with disbelief. Then Claire's mother stood so quickly that her chair scraped against the floor. Her face flushed with anger. She did not ask how Claire had built the company. She did not say she was proud. She did not apologize for years of mockery. Instead, she accused Claire of letting the family struggle while she had millions. That sentence changed the room. Claire looked at her mother and finally revealed what no one else knew. She had been sending $7,000 every month to help them, quietly, consistently. Without asking for credit, her aunt gasped. Her father looked confused. Her younger sisters stared at their parents. For one brief second, the truth seemed powerful enough to shame them, but shame did not last. Her mother said $7,000 a month was nothing compared to what Claire had. Her younger sister began crying and said Claire had betrayed the family by hiding her success. Her father accused her of being selfish and ungrateful. Relatives shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to defend Claire or stay silent. Then came the demands. Her younger sister's student loans, a trust fund, a new start, her parents' mortgage, retirement money, a better house, maybe even a vacation home because according to her mother they had sacrificed so much. Nobody asked if Claire had struggled. Nobody asked how many nights she had worked without sleep. Nobody asked what it cost to build a company alone. They only saw what they wanted from her. Claire closed the laptop, picked up her bag, and walked toward the front door. Her younger sister shouted that she could not just leave. Claire stopped for a moment and looked back at the dining room. The table was full of people, but all she could see was the empty row from her childhood piano recital. The same absence, the same truth. They had only noticed her when there was something to take. Then Claire walked out into the cold November night, leaving the warm house behind her. For the first time, she did not feel like the forgotten daughter. She felt like a woman who had finally stopped waiting to be chosen. By the time Claire reached her car that Thanksgiving night, her phone was already vibrating nonstop. At first, some small part of her still hoped one person in that house might understand what had happened. Maybe her aunt would check whether she got home safely. Maybe her father would calm down. Maybe her mother would realize how cruel that dinner had become. But hope in that family had always been the first thing to disappoint her. The first message came from her younger sister accusing Claire of humiliating her. The next came from her mother demanding that she come back because they were still family. Then her father wrote that leaving only proved Claire knew she was wrong. By midnight, her phone had dozens of missed calls, hundreds of messages, and a family group chat that looked less like a conversation and more like a trial where Claire had already been found guilty. Her mother's messages changed hour by hour. First came anger. Then came the request to talk like adults. Then came guilt with reminders that Claire had been blessed and should share those blessings. By morning, her mother had started sending links to houses in nicer neighborhoods, asking which one Claire thought would be reasonable for her parents. Her younger sister sent a list of what she called basic support: student loans paid in full, money for an MBA, a trust fund, a new apartment in Chicago, a fresh start. The list was written with such confidence that it barely sounded like a request. It sounded like an invoice. Claire did not answer. Her silence made them louder. Her younger sister posted vague messages online about selfish rich relatives who forgot where they came from. She did not use Claire's name, but she did not need to. Cousins Claire had not spoken to in years suddenly appeared with opinions about family loyalty and generosity. A former neighbor sent a message saying money changed people. An uncle emailed a long lecture about how family wealth should help the whole family. Family wealth. As if they had helped build any part of it. The worst part was how quickly the story changed. Her younger sister claimed she had always supported Claire's career. Her mother told relatives Claire had hidden money while watching everyone struggle. Her father said Claire had become cold after moving away and making rich friends. Nobody mentioned the $7,000 a month. Nobody mentioned the years of jokes about her career. Nobody mentioned that the truth only came out because her younger sister took Claire's laptop without permission. The Monday after Thanksgiving, the family crossed a line they could never uncross. Claire was in her Chicago office when her assistant called from the reception desk. Her voice was careful, the way people speak when they already know something is wrong. 3 people were there claiming to be Claire's family, and they did not have an appointment. Claire knew who it was before the names were said. When she walked into the reception area, her mother was sitting stiffly on the leather couch as if she belonged there. Her father stood near the window with his arms crossed. Her younger sister was holding her phone, pretending to admire the office while clearly trying to capture proof of Claire's success. Claire asked why they were there. Her mother smiled as though the Thanksgiving argument had been a small misunderstanding. She said the family had discussed everything and decided the healthiest path forward was for Claire to set up proper support, a trust for the younger sister, a retirement fund for the parents. Perhaps even a family foundation because it would look respectable. Claire repeated the words quietly. A family foundation. For appearances, her younger sister stepped forward and said Claire owed them. She said Claire had gotten lucky and should stop acting superior just because she worked with jewelry. Her father added that Claire needed to remember who raised her. Something inside Claire went still. For years, those words had worked on her. They had made her shrink, apologize, and wonder if she was being unkind. But standing in the office she had built, surrounded by employees who respected her and clients who trusted her, the old guilt finally lost its power. Claire told them they had housed her, but they had not truly raised her. She said she had built her life through work, study, risk, and years of being underestimated. Then in front of them she took out her phone and canceled the monthly transfer. $7,000 a month. Gone. Her mother gasped. Her younger sister said Claire could not do that. Her father warned that she would regret it. But Claire had already made the decision. Her assistant had called building security, and 2 guards arrived moments later. The confrontation grew louder, but it did not become dangerous. It became embarrassing. Her mother protested. Her father argued. Her younger sister cried, but no one rushed to comfort her this time. The family was escorted out of the building while Claire stood in the reception area with a calm face and a shaking heart. It did not feel like victory. It felt like grief with clean edges. After that day, Claire hired an attorney. She changed her personal number, upgraded her home security, and instructed her staff not to accept any family contact through the company. When her younger sister tried to reach clients through the business website, Claire's lawyer sent a formal cease and desist letter. That finally slowed the harassment. Family drama could be dismissed. Legal consequences could not. 2 days later, Claire's grandmother called. Her voice was gentle but not surprised. She said she had heard Thanksgiving had been lively. Claire laughed for the first time in days. Then her grandmother told her she was proud. Not because of the money, not because of the company, but because Claire had finally stopped paying rent in a place that had never given her a room. Those words broke through the wall Claire had been holding up. She cried not because she missed the family chaos, but because someone finally understood what it had cost her to leave it. Months passed. Her younger sister continued posting vague comments about betrayal and toxic success. Her mother told relatives she had never wanted Claire's money anyway. Her father said Claire had become too proud for her family. Perhaps that version helped them sleep at night. Claire stopped trying to correct the story. Her life became quieter. Sunday dinners were no longer filled with insults disguised as jokes. Her phone no longer carried the same dread. Some evenings she cooked for herself in her peaceful kitchen. Other times her grandmother visited, and together they sorted antique jewelry at the counter just as they had done when Claire was a child. The old woman still said every old thing had a story. Claire's story was not about a daughter who abandoned her family. It was about a daughter who finally stopped abandoning herself. For years she had believed love meant being useful, quiet, and easy to overlook. Now she understood that real love did not ask a person to disappear. It did not punish success. It did not count someone's money and call it loyalty. On Thanksgiving night, her younger sister thought she had exposed Claire's greatest secret. In a way she had. But the real secret was never the $12 million. The real secret was that Claire had been free to leave all along.